Hi everyone, in this video we're going to be taking a look at some of the common misconceptions that you want to avoid within the functional skills course. These are certain things that you might do with reading and writing, but also we're going to think about some of the common beliefs that are held within functional skills and make sure we address them and understand which ones are the correct ones to really know and understand. Now this video has been designed for anyone studying level 1, level 2, entry level or ESOL functional skills English, and if you haven't done so already, please can you like and subscribe. It really helps us out when you do so. The first thing I'd like you to do then is to have a look at the following statements and just identify which ones are true and which are false. Now these statements have been designed just to test your current understanding of the functional skills course. So first of all then, it says the speaking and listening assessment is two different tasks. Secondly, we have the reading assessment is harder than the writing assessment. It can take up to 6 weeks to get the results back from an assessment. And finally, you have to know how to spell complicated words correctly in order to pass the writing assessment. Now, if you want to pause the video here and look through them at your own time and have a think about which ones might be true or false, please feel free to do so. We're now going to jump ahead and go through the answers in the next part of the video. Class feedback. Check your answers against the ones below. So you can see there on the left hand side we have the ones that are true, and on the right we have the ones that are false. So first of all then, the speaking and listening assessment are two different tasks. So we did recently do a video talking about speaking and listening, so if you haven't checked that out, please do in more detail. It is quite an important thing to go over. We talk about a lot of the rules that you need to think about and some of the common things that are going to help you get a pass. One of the big things to remember with this one is that there's actually an individual presentation as well as a group presentation or group task that you'll need to go through. Secondly then, it can take up to 6 weeks to get your results back. Now this can be quite tricky, especially if you're on quite a short course, a 16-week course as opposed to a year course. That means that you're going to be waiting for quite a lot of time just for those results. So bear in mind that when you do take your assessments, often it is easier to actually do it online or on a computer because generally they get the results back a bit quicker. The downside with that though is that if you're not very computer literate, then it might be harder to actually pass the assessment. All of these things need to be taken into account when you're thinking about doing either your reading or your writing assessment. So now if we look at the false statements then, so the reading assessment is harder than the writing assessment. Now really this could be true or false, and it really comes down to the individual. Generally speaking though, reading is something we do on a day-to-day basis, even if it's just something as simple as reading a text message or something on social media. We're still engaging with text quite regularly. However, writing is something that we don't often do, especially when you think about things like writing a letter, which again is something that isn't done often unless you're dictated to do so by some form of employment. The next one then, you have to know how to spell complicated words correctly in order to pass the writing assessment. So although this one is in the false column, it's not strictly false. What I mean by this is that in order to pass this assessment, we don't want you to be able to spell the most complicated words in the world correctly. That's not what we're assessing. What we're assessing here is functional skills. And with that in mind, we're thinking about the most basic understanding of spelling and grammar and punctuation. So you need to make sure that you're using the correct spelling forms for basic everyday words that you use in everyday language. Now, if you want to stretch and challenge yourself, I want you to think about what is the acronym needed for functional skills English. If you're not too sure what we mean when we say an acronym is a word that's made up by the first letter of a key word. So for example, most people have heard of SOS, which is Save Our Souls. So in that instance, each one of the letters in the acronym stands for a specific word that make up the bigger understanding associated with that acronym. By the end of the lesson, you should be able to recall key elements of previous learning, understand the common misconceptions about functional skills, and finally, apply your understanding to an attempt of reading assessment. So what we're going to do then is we're going to think about doing a little bit of a learning recap. So what I'd like you to do is try and answer the questions to demonstrate your understanding of the course so far. Now, all of these questions are going to relate to key elements that we've looked at throughout the course. Specifically, we're going to be going through some of the things that we've addressed in our videos as well. So if you're not too sure about any of these, don't worry about it too much. But then just have a think about the other videos that we have on our channel, and these will help just reaffirm your understanding of these key questions. So number one then, how many assessments are there in the functional skills course? Number two, recall 3 or more of the language devices in the acronym DAFOREST. Number 3. What is the purpose of brackets? Number 4. How long do you get for the reading assessment? Number 5. What is meant by the term TAP? So again, as we've said before, if you want to pause the video here and take your time and go through these questions, please feel free to do so. We're now going to jump ahead and we're going to go through the answers in the next part of the video. Class feedback. Check your answers against the ones below. So the first question was asking you very simply, how many assessments would you have to do on your functional skills course? And the answer is 3 assessments. So even though the speaking and listening is actually 2, it's classed as just 3 assessments in total. So we have our reading assessment, our writing assessment, and speaking and listening. Number 2, recall 3 or more of the language devices in the acronym DAFOREST. So hopefully we're all aware of what these mean by now. We have direct address. Now this is often changed by certain teachers to discourse markers. A discourse marker is a word that helps us to actually direct the conversation. So you have things like firstly, secondly, or thirdly. However, in my example, we went with direct address. So we have direct address, alliteration, fact, opinion, rhetorical question, repetition, emotive language, statistics, and triplets. So if you're not too sure what we mean by that, please do check out our other videos, specifically our writing questions, or our writing videos that go into that in more depth. Next one then, number 3. So what is the purpose of brackets? Now this is a really important question because it comes up time and time again on the reading assessment. It's also a really good thing to actually use in your own writing as well. So the purpose of brackets then is just to add additional information. Number 4, how long do you get for the reading assessment? So you get 1 hour. And number 5, what is meant by the term TAP? And we have topic, audience, and purpose. Spelling test. Listen to your teacher as they read the sentence and write the correct spelling of the key word. So before we begin the spelling test then, just think about the teacher's top tip. So it says, listen carefully to the way the key words are used in the example sentence. This is really going to help us to think about the correct word that you need to be writing down and how to spell it correctly. So number 1, the car was parked on double yellow lines, so the people who owned it had to move their car. And the word I'd like you to spell is the word there. So I'll give you the sentence again. The car was parked on double yellow lines, so the people who own it had to move their car. And the word to spell is the word there. Number 2. To avoid facing a serious fine, it was necessary that they move the car quickly. So I'll read that again. To avoid facing a serious fine, it was necessary that they move the car quickly. The word I'd like you to spell is the word necessary. Number 3. When teenagers listen to music, they can't always hear when a car is approaching. So I'll read it again. When teenagers listen to music, they can't always hear when a car is approaching. And the word I'd like to spell is the word hear. Number 4. The class were misbehaving for the teacher. They were being very disruptive. So I'll read it again. The class were misbehaving for the teacher. They were being very disruptive. The word I'd like you to spell is the word disruptive. Number 5, our final spelling. I love English. I will definitely be attending next week. So I'll read that again. I love English. I will definitely be attending next week. And the word I'd like you to spell is the word definitely. Now if you want to pause the video here and listen to the spellings again, please feel free to do so. We're now going to jump ahead and we're going to see what they should look like in the next part of the video. As feedback, check your understanding against the answers below. So number 1, the car was parked on double yellow lines, so the people who owned it had to move their car. Now the reason why we know that this is the correct spelling of there in this situation is because this is the possessive there. It means it's owned by someone. So if you're not sure about the 3 different theirs that we have, please do go back and double check their meanings, because how you use them in specific situations vary quite differently. Number 2, to avoid facing a serious fine, it was necessary that they move the car quickly. Now necessary is a very commonly misspelled word. A good habit to remember how to spell it is that it has 1 collar, which means 1 C, and 2 sleeves. So that's going to just help you to remember how to actually approach that key question. So 1 collar and 2 sleeves. Number 3, when teenagers listen to music, they can't always hear when a car is approaching. Again, what we're focusing on here is the same as question 1. We're focusing on a homophone. So even though here is spelled correctly in this case, you could also spell it H-E-R-E, and that would be incorrect for the situation. That one would be relating to a location or a position of something. However, this one, the one with ear in the name, is actually referring to something that you can physically hear. Number 4, the class were misbehaving for the teacher, so they were being very disruptive. So disruptive is spelled D-I-S-R-U-P-T-I-V-E. And our final one in this series, I love English. I would definitely be attending next week. So with a word like definitely, it's really easy to misspell because we have multiple letters that are repeated. So just double check and make sure that you're getting that identified correctly. So definitely is D-E-F-I-N-I-T-E-L-Y. Now what we're going to do is we're going to look at another 5 key words that you need to look at for spelling. And these are all very typical ones to look out for when you're producing your own writing assessment as well. Now what we're going to do is have a look at an additional 5 questions just to test our ability to understand things like homophones and those tricky spellings where we repeat the same letter 2 or more times. So for the next one, this will actually be number 6 in our spellings. So the behaviour of the class was unacceptable, and the word we're trying to spell is unacceptable. So the sentence again is, the behaviour of the class was unacceptable. Number 7, I think it's important to vote, otherwise you don't know who is running the government. So the word I want you to spell is government. So here's the sentence again. I think it's important to vote, otherwise you don't know who is running the government. And the word we're spelling is government. Number 8, English is on every week. It is a regular occurrence. The word I'd like to spell is occurrence. So here's a sentence again. English is on every week. It is a regular occurrence. Number 9. The teenagers love films, so they're going to the cinema on the weekend. And the key word I'd like you to focus on and try to spell is there. So here's a sentence again. The teenagers love films, so they're going to the cinema on the weekend. Number 10, and our final spelling then. The weather in the UK is simply awful. And the word I'd like you to spell is the word weather. So here's the sentence again. The weather in the UK is simply awful. So we're going to jump ahead now and we're going to go through the correct answers in the next part of the video. So here we have number 6. The behaviour of the class was unacceptable. So again, this is one of the key words that you need to know because it's really easy to misspell because repeating the same letter 2 or more times. Number 7, I think it's important to vote, otherwise you don't know who's running the government. So the key one with this is to know that the word govern and then ment. So just breaking down the spelling with that one. So we call this spelling things out phonetically. It works with some words but not all of them. So just try and figure out which words it works for and which ones you should avoid using it for. A lot of the time it's all about learning as you go and trying to get used to the kind of spellings that you're able to spell naturally and the ones that you need to make sure you spend a bit more time going over. Number 8, English is on every week. It is a regular occurrence. So occurrence, again, we've got a double C, double R, and also 2 E's as well. So a very difficult word to spell. Number 9, the teenagers love films, so they're going to the cinema on the weekend. Again, this is a very typical example of a homophone. We can see there because they've used an apostrophe, they're omitting or missing out the letter A, and what it actually says is they are going, but we've shortened it to make it sound a little bit more informal. And the final one, number 10, the weather in the UK is simply awful. Again, another homophone as well, very easy to get those two mixed up. So check your answers, actually log how many questions you got right, because again, spelling is quite a key component, especially when you go on to the writing assessment as well. So now that we've gone over a few of the more common misconceptions with things like spelling, we're going to just make sure that we're happy with the speaking and listening assessment. So if you are actually writing and planning this, please do check out our other video that goes into it in a bit more detail and starts helping you actually plan out what you could do for your activities. Now, within the speaking and listening assessment, there are 2 different activities. So for activity 1, it's going to be a group discussion on a single topic. In it, learners need to express their viewpoint clearly, respect the turn taking of others. Now that's a really important one because what that means is that you're not talking over anyone and that you're actually acknowledging that they've made a contribution to the discussion and that you can build on it and not interrupt it. Contribute to the conversation. So you can't just sit there when the rest of the group are talking. You've got to be watching, waiting, and being ready to respond and add your ideas to the general conversation. Show positive body language. So this might seem like quite an obvious thing, but make sure you're doing things like making eye contact, not folding your arms, and actually doing things like smiling or nodding along to the conversation, just to show that you understand and that you follow the conversation, and also that you respect the person that is speaking at the time. For activity 2, this is the one where we're talking about an individual presentation. This can be on a topic that's important to you. If you're not too sure what kind of topic you could talk about, please do check out our other video specifically going through speaking and listening in more detail. So you need to provide evidence. So this can be things like a PowerPoint or a Word document. So this is going to be really important because your teacher needs to actually justify the mark they're giving you, and they'll actually need to produce paperwork to say that you've produced your speaking and listening. So any evidence you can provide them with is going to be very beneficial and help them move the process along a lot quicker. Speak for 2 to 5 minutes. When you are doing your speaking and listening, often when we plan it out, it seems a lot shorter than it really is. So just play around with it. Try reading it out loud. Try doing it in front of friends or family just to get a little bit of practice before your assessment. Present confidently and calmly. If you're not too sure about these, there's actually quite a few examples of really good speaking and listening assessments on YouTube as well. So if you just search them in, quite a few would come up if you want to use them as inspiration. Respond appropriately to questions. So this is going to be really important because once you have finished talking about your topic, you should end it by asking, does anyone have any questions? And the key thing with this one is that you think carefully about what they're asking you, you take on board their comments, and that you respond appropriately. There's nothing worse than when you start kind of going, I'm not sure. So if you're a bit worried about that, you could always get a friend or another member of the class to actually have a question prepared and that you know that's going to come up, and it just helps you to get a few more marks in terms of not only listening to what people have to say, but also responding in an appropriate manner. And the final one, have positive body language. So just the same as activity 1 really. If you are going to present it, if you're standing up at the front of your class, you need to make sure that you're facing the people you're talking to. Don't look directly at one person. Spend a few seconds looking around the room, make a little bit of eye contact. We don't really want to be staring at anyone in too much detail. I hope that helped clear up a few misconceptions within functional skills. If you've got anything that you're unsure about, please let us know and leave a comment and I'll try and get back to you. New videos will be added every single week. Alternatively, you can leave us a comment below or visit our partner channel Book on Teaching for more lessons and guidance on all things English. If you made it this far, guys, please could you like and subscribe. It really does help us out when you do so. We appreciate all your support as well. It really does help us out and really help motivate us to keep making these videos. All the best with your work and revision in the future, and let us know if there's anything you'd like us to focus on going forward. Bye bye.